As per usual on a visit over here, you managed to leave behind most of what you brought with you. Ergo, laundered and ink is your handkerchief, which I retrieved from behind the cushion of the settee, your almost empty tube of denture fixative, which had somehow been trodden into the dining room carpet, a book entitled Families and How to Survive Them, which I can only assume is yours. You must tell me how it ends sometime. A pair of fuchsia tights, which I found in the lavatory cistern. Goodness knows what you thought you were up to, but I thought at the time you were making some pretty strange noises in there. And what appears on close examination to be a half-sucked gobstopper, but which on first viewing I mistook for an eyeball. Considering you only popped in for lunch, I think that this time you excelled yourself in the bits dropping off you stakes. It was lovely seeing your daughter Karen again, and so good of her to let you come along with her on the spur of the moment on a date that had been in both our diaries for weeks. She seems reconciled now to her husband St. John's extramarital behaviour with your son Howard's surrogate baby's mother, and to the fact that her new niece or nephew, when it's born, will actually be her stepchild. On second thoughts, perhaps the book on surviving families was hers, poor girl. Do give her my love, and tell her I'll be over for that weekend break just as soon as Beryl next door is out of hospital with her bottom. Fond regards, Irene.
The coach house, the bothy little shagthorn, dear Irene. Also, as per usual, the words dog and manger come to mind when replying to your last. I'm far too busy preparing for my Dale's TV chat show to take offence. But you should know that it was only on my persuasion that Karen came at all. She said she was tired and couldn't be bothered to drive all that way. Knowing how much you depend on the kindness of strangers and how disappointed you would be, I offered to drive her. Really, I wish I hadn't. I'm aware that you believe in plain food, but your lunch of stewed beef with prunes had the effect several bowls of All-Bran can't achieve on my innards, hence my sojourn in the lavatory. Your cistern is faulty, by the way. I could only get it to flush by tying my tights round the ball cock. The gobstopper is in fact an indigestion pill. I popped it into my mouth between courses. Unfortunately, to cap it all, or rather to decap it, your syrup tart dislodged my dentures at first bite, hence the need for fixative. I wondered what had happened to the pill. Both Karen and I were very disappointed not to have the promised introduction to your long-lost son, Christopher. We speculated about it on the return journey and wondered, since you didn't mention him, whether you have already had one of your famous fallings out. I actually left Families and How to Survive Them as a subtle hint. Pity you didn't take it. Naturally, I wouldn't have said a word about any of this had your letter not all but demanded an explanation. Must stop and get back to work on my new Dale's TV morning magazine chat show. Did I mention that? It's to be entitled The Dale's Diaries, and given the massive response in Great Shagthorn to my appearance in A Life with Sheep and their desperation for ratings, they plan to put me on the air very shortly. Fond regards, Vera.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dear Vera, I shall pass over your obviously jealous remarks about my cooking, since Karen so clearly relished the lunch. She hugged me in the kitchen, in fact between courses when she helped me out with the plates, and told me with sentimental tears in her eyes that she'd had nothing like it since school dinners. The dear girl. What does concern me, though, is that you said she couldn't be bothered to drive over to see me. I think I am secure enough in my relations with your lovely daughter to be certain that, if she said that about coming here to see me, all cannot be well with her. Isn't Howard's surrogate baby's mother due to give birth at any moment? If I were you, I would keep a very watchful eye on Karen over the next few weeks. I know that if I had had to witness a child of my late husband Clive's pop out of another woman, and had then to welcome it into the bosom of my family, I would have felt like doing something quite uncharacteristic and extremely giddy. I'm sorry to disappoint you about my relations with my son Christopher, by the by, which are in the best of health. Thank you so much for asking. He's coming over at the weekend, as a matter of fact, to take me out for a run in his Porsche. Which puts me in mind of Shakespeare's old saying, Vera, "The quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath." Since you are the place beneath in this particular instance, I shall not strain my mercy either. You are forgiven for not reading the notice in my smallest room, "Please pull chain gently." There would have been years more usage in my ballcock if you had followed this instruction to the letter. All the best, Irene.
Vera@dalesdiaries.com. Dear Irene, as you'll see from the above, I've got a new address to accommodate the immense email I anticipate from my eminent TV programme. Speaking of jealousy, I notice you make no mention of it in your last. Probably your memory isn't what it was. I'm sure you'll deny, for instance, that you had 3 sherries before lunch last week. So let me refresh it. A Life with Sheep was a wonderfully illuminating tick-on-the-wall documentary made about all of us great shaggers last year. My son Howard, his partner Anthony, and their attempts to get pregnant by surrogacy on their sheep farm were the original subjects, hence the title. But for some reason, Dale's TV decided I was the star, and the public agreed with them. The producer, Benji Hartley-Dixon, asked me if I would like to host, I suppose really that should be hostess, my own chat show. And ever since then, he and I have been working on what he calls the format. It's been through 42 drafts. I could do with Shakespeare's help myself. I'd no idea so much rewriting was involved in a simple chat show. I imagined I'd just go in front of the cameras and chat. The reason, by the way, for Karen's so-called depression is that, owing to the above, I've had to give up, temporarily, being head cook and baby-minder. For once in her life, she's having to do it herself. The results, of course, are disastrous. It's hardly surprising St. John strayed. A less generous husband would have left home entirely long since. Whoops! Doorbell. It was Zizi, Tasmin and Polly, my researchers. Their average age is 16, so I don't know what they can know about life, but I hope their search for it has been fruitful. I'm exhausted. All for now, V. P.S. Sorry about your ballcock. I've never known one respond to handling gently. I suppose that's the result of overuse. Perhaps by Beryl and her bottom.
Howie and Ants at sheepshag.com. Dear Reen, Mumsy mentioned you'd been inquiring after our pregnancy, so I thought I'd grab a moment between sheep milking and yoghurt fermenting to let you know how we're doing. Our surrogate mum, Natasha, or Tash as we call her, has settled into our community well. We've managed to wean her onto organic food and have all had a great time playing disco to our unborn baby and reading it Harry Potter. Tash will shortly be having a home birth with myself and Anthony in attendance. There'll be an official midwife as well, though there's little that Ants and I don't know about delivery after breeding a pedigree sheep flock. We've made it up with brother-in-law St. John and Tash's husband Wayne, but sister Karen is still a problem. She's just so selfish. After all, St. John was only trying to help by impregnating Tash when the syringe method failed. Our main worry is how we'll cope after the baby's born and Tash goes home. We were approached after A Life with Sheep to turn Sheep Dipper's shed into a theme farm, but the developers wanted to have Ants and I dressed up as heritage shepherds. I didn't mind that so much. I'm a natural for little Bo Peep. But I drew the line at all the additives they wanted to put in the yoghurt. Back to square one on the finances. We're now thinking of making a child-friendly sheep-themed educational centre. With Karen and St. John's 3 and our new baby, we'll soon have plenty of kids to entertain. You must come and visit after the birth and see our little one for yourself. We're so excited. Loads of love, Howie.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dear Vera, if I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. With Beryl's bottom, it isn't a question of how much she has to go. It's a question of what's around it, in it, and what comes out of it that's the problem. If you want more details than that, I'll give you her phone number. She'll tell anyone chapter and verse of the sorry tale at the drop of a hat. All for now, I feel the muse coming upon me. Irene. Dear Howard, thank you for your email. I'm glad to hear things have settled down in your complex family relations, although I do think both you and your mother are being rather harsh on poor Karen. Give her time. You can't expect her to be overjoyed at the fact that her husband was intimate with another woman, however well-meaning he thought he was being at the time. The fact of the matter is, in a few weeks she will be an aunt and a stepmother in one fell swoop. I know if it was me it would take some digesting. I propose of coming to grips with complicated situations. I was most struck by the idea that you are reading to the new baby through its mummy's tummy, and I have taken the liberty of penning a few verses to explain to it its unusual situation vis-à-vis its parentage. Perhaps you would be so kind as to read to it the following ode. All good wishes and love to Anthony, Reen. Welcome, new baby small, a poem by Irene Spencer. Hello in there, my little one, in all your unborn glory. Quite soon you'll be out here with us, so you should know your story. In common with all other babes, you'll pop out mummy's tummy, from whence you'll be in daddy's arms. And that's where it gets funny. Where other babies have one dad, for you there will be 4. And mums, that usually come in ones, you'll have, 2 or more. So let me introduce you now to save a later muddle to all your parents. 6 in all, my, what a lot to cuddle. There's Daddy St. John with long legs, a vet who gave you life. And Mummy Karen, who isn't your mum, but is your daddy's wife. Then there's Daddy Wayne, of course, who wouldn't be a relation if he weren't married to Mummy Tash, who gave you your creation. Last comes Daddy Howard and his partner Daddy Ants. You'll know them when you see them. They'll be the ones who change your pants. You'll live happy ever after on their farm Sheep Dipper's shed, and they will be your parents, even though they can't be wed.
Dear Reen, thanks for the hysterical poem. We read it out loud, screaming with laughter, and it obviously struck a chord with our little unborn as he/she began to kick wildly. Poor Tash got quite bilious. She had to lie down and have one of Ant's famous massages. That's another money spinner we've decided to try out at Sheep Dippers. Ant is wonderful with his hands, but there's only so much you can do to a sheep. His talents are rather wasted. Your explanation of our baby's parentage did highlight a few bothersome areas. Calling it small nearly provoked a climax. Ant and I have argued for months about what surname to give it. Naturally, I favour small, he favours flowers. We've thought of a hyphen, but small flowers sounds a bit, well, lavender. Especially if it's a boy. We don't want to prejudice people's attitudes right from the beginning. As Mumsy keeps saying, the poor little mite will have enough to contend with. Big kisses, Howie. P.S. Take your point about Karen. Perhaps we should ask her to be godmother.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dear Vera, had the most wonderful time with my son Christopher on Sunday. He picked me up in his Porsche and drove me to a most exclusive restaurant over at Spittal Common, which is owned by a friend of his. You may have heard of him, given your interest in the culinary arts. Simon Strange has his own television show, Strange Food, cooking for his friends at exclusive dinner parties. Chris has been on it several times, apparently. Attached is a photograph of the 3 of us, convivially postprandial, which I thought that you might like to see, given that you have all but suggested in the past that my good relationship with my son is a figment of my imagination. I had a word with Beryl next door, as you requested, about whether she'd be interested in bearing all on your forthcoming cable television programme, but she has declined. By the by, I hope you notice that I have mentioned your television show, since you accused me in a recent email of not alluring to it because of supposed jealousy. Honestly, Vera, why on earth would I be jealous? As far as I'm concerned, I couldn't be more delighted that you have at last found a new hobby which satisfies the demands of your larger-than-life ego, and if you seriously think it could be otherwise, then I'm afraid you must be suffering from paranoia. However, since we are on the subject, I would remind you that I still have an email in my inbox sent by you last year where you asked me to take part on the show as your co-presenter. I note that in the not mentioning it stakes, this subject has now become top of the league table. All good wishes, Irene.
Vera@dalesdiaries.com. Dear Irene, yes, I have heard of Simon Strange. In fact, I watched a few of his dinner parties and even tried one or two of the recipes. Strange food indeed. I hope he didn't serve you his stuffed squirrel. In my opinion, that would go better on a mantelpiece. His guests were pretty peculiar too. They were over-made up, giggling wildly and waving their arms, and that was just the men. Quite honestly, I wondered if they were on something. Perhaps it was too much coriander. I don't recall seeing your son Christopher, but of course I didn't know him then. Nor do I now, for that matter. Anyway, I'm delighted that you all had such a good time. The wine at least must have been plentiful, judging by the photo I downloaded. Your eyes appear to be pointing in different directions. Now, Irene, I've thought long and hard about whether to tell you this, but I've realised after your recent incinerations that it can't be avoided. It seems I was rather premature in offering to share my limelight with you. As a novice in the television world, I hadn't realised that no one pays any attention to what the creatives say, and my pleas to include you as co-hostess have fallen on deaf ears. They insist they want someone charismatic. However, after seeing how handsome Christopher looks, especially in that lilac shirt, a brilliant idea has occurred to me. How about both of you coming on my first Dale's Diary TV programme and telling the story of how you lost him and then he found you? I'm sure it's sufficiently shocking and revelatory to fulfil the demands of my team of researchers. They are getting increasingly desperate and are now suggesting I interview Anne Widdecombe. I shudder at the thought of what she might reveal. Take as long as you like to think about it and let me know by tomorrow morning. Fond regards, Vera.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dear Vera, excuse the tardiness of my reply, but I have been extremely busy. In fact, I was just sitting at my laptop to log on to you on Wednesday when the doorbell rang and my life became a giddy whirl of exciting activity. Christopher had arrived in a red Lamborghini and was wanting me to come with him there and then for a spin. Little did I know when I grabbed my jacket and handbag that the spin wouldn't stop until we had crossed and recrossed the White Cliffs of Dover and toured through half of Europe. We arrived back here at the Limes, exhausted but exhilarated 3 days later, and everything that I needed he just went out and bought. I've come back with 2 new frocks, an Yves St. Laurent suit, new shoes, new underwear. Sons are so much more impulsive than daughters, aren't they? I have only remade Chrissy's acquaintance for a few short months, and in that time he has arrived here in a Jaguar, a Mercedes Sports Coupe, last week's Porsche, this week's Lamborghini. Indeed, such is his passion for motor cars, and dare I say it for his mum, that while we were in Prague on Friday, he popped out to get the morning papers and came back, having swapped his Lamborghini for a Ford Mondeo, saying that I would be much more comfortable in a saloon car for the return journey. The dear boy. He was absolutely right, of course. Little sports cars are lovely to look at, but very awkward for ladies to get into and out of elegantly, and rather short on legroom. Of course, he is something of an expert on motor cars, what with having his own pre-owned vehicle reallocation consultancy. As the miles rolled by us, I put to him your request of our appearing together on your show, and as I thought he was of the same mind as I myself on the subject, we have no desire for our moving and complex tale of Christopher's origins to become entertainment for the cable television viewing public of Great and Little Shagthorne. So, good luck with Anne Widdecombe. All good wishes, Irene.
Vera@dalesdiaries.com. Dear Irene, I was beginning to think the conundrum I'd set you was proving too much, and I should have asked Christopher directly. So as soon as you explained he was a second-hand car dealer, I looked him up in Yellow Pages under C. Thorogood and took the liberty of sending him a reminder of our previous encounter and a personal invitation to appear on my show. We're fine for the first one, by the way, in case you were worried that your refusal would cause me any anxiety. ZZ, Tasmin and Polly have found a bodybuilder who's had a sex change and is coming on with his tattooed ex-wife for a bout of mud wrestling. Whoops, nearly made a mistake in my haste and wrote nude wrestling. Wouldn't want you to think we were just into sensationalism. Anyway, do let me know if you change your mind. All for now, Vera. Dear Christopher, I feel I can call you that after our brief but entrancing former acquaintance. I don't know what your mum has told you about me since, or if she's told you anything at all. Sometimes Irene can be very possessive. However, I recently sent her an invitation for you and she to appear on my Dale's Diaries TV show. I needn't tell you what good publicity a morning magazine programme can be for a business entrepreneur such as yourself. We'll be reaching a global audience. My researchers have recently been chasing stories as far away as the North Pole. Not that they'd have a lot of use for old bangers there, but I don't doubt with your good looks and charm you could sell one to a walrus. Also, and don't pass this on to your mum, we're still looking for a vibrant young co-presenter. I won't say any more, but if you're as photogenius as you seem, you could be just the ticket. Warm regards, Vera Small.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dear Vera, Christopher has forwarded the email you wrote to him on to me, and I have to say that I am shocked to my foundations. How could you even think of going behind my back to try to tempt my son into betraying me? Does our so-called friendship mean nothing to you? I'll tell you what I think. A, that you haven't even mentioned me as a possible co-presenter of the wretched show to your producer because you fear I might outshine you, and B, that you have become foolishly and giddily intoxicated with Christopher's charm and good looks and have started to fantasize erroneously that some romantic relationship could develop between you along the lines of Richard and Judy. Unless you can prove my theories groundless, please do not trouble yourself either to reply to this missive or indeed to ever contact me again. Yours, hurt, bruised, confused and desiccated, one who has hitherto always thought of herself as your erstwhile friend, Irene Spencer.
Vera at dalesdiaries.com. Irene! As usual, you have totally misunderstood my motives. I thought I was doing Christopher a favour. Come to that, I thought I was doing you one. If you're expecting to carry on the expensive lifestyle to which you are obviously becoming accustomed, the idea that I would be harbouring romantic illusions for a man half or even 3/4 my age, how old exactly were you when you had him, by the way, is ridiculous. I knew that you would take my offer the wrong way, hence my request to him to keep it to himself. I am shocked he hasn't treated my email as confidential, nor been civil enough to reply. Not the behaviour of the gentleman I remember. Since you are obviously consumed with envy and smarting desperately at your rejection, I have begged Dale's TV to think again. Otherwise, I can see I shall never hear the end of it. I'm sure in your present hurt, bruised, confused and desiccated state, you won't believe anything I say, so I have asked ZZ, Tasmin and Polly to get in touch with you personally. Yours, Vera.
Dale's TV, Horsetooth Road, Saddlecombe, near Great Shagthorne, Darbs, Friday 13th. Dear Mrs. Spencer, on behalf of Dale's TV and our producer, Benji Hartley-Dixon, we would like to extend to you the offer to co-present a pilot episode of our new show, The Dale's Diaries. This will be a fun mix of popular, social, cultural, culinary and humorous strands. Vera has told us lots about you, but we're sure with a little adjustment you'll fit in. Do say yes. We start rehearsals on Tuesday at 10:30. Cheers, Zizi, Tasmin and Polly.
Monday. Dear Vera, thank you for your apology, which is duly accepted. I have just received by post, or snail mail, as we emailers now call it, the invitation to co-host the Dales Diaries, which, since you seem to be in an absolute last-minute pickle, I shall graciously accept. Since your researchers have not included their email address, would you please be so good as to print off and deliver the following missive? They also don't say what time rehearsals start tomorrow morning, so I may be late as the first train to Little Shagthorn arrives in at 11:30. I imagine that you mean me to stay with you while I'm doing the show. Fortunately, Beryl next door has been returned to the community by the hospital, so I'll ask her to do my lights and curtains until further notice. Best wishes, Irene. 42 The Limes, Heather Green. Dear Zizi, Tasmin and Polly, thank you for your invitation to co-present the Dales Diaries cable television show, albeit at short notice. Since you do not mention remuneration in your letter, please note that you will be contacted by Mr. Christopher Thorogood in due course, who is my agent in these affairs. I don't know if Vera has mentioned my proclivities with the pen, but I am in fact something of a poet, and as such will be able to contribute verse to suit most occasions. I shall hope to be visited by the muse between now and when we meet tomorrow, and shall surprise you all accordingly. Looking forward to the start of a fruitful and happy relationship with you all. Yours very sincerely, Irene Spencer, Mrs.
Vera at dalesdiaries.com, Tuesday, 2 a.m. Irene, for goodness sake, don't come. Just got in from a terrible row at Dales TV. My researchers, Zizi, Tasmin and Polly, have been sacked. Apparently they didn't consult the producer, Benji Hartley-Dixon, over your appointment. I've never heard language like it. He stormed round the studio like a toddler in a tantrum. Also discovered a problem with the budget. There isn't one. Do hope you check your email before laying out on the train fare. V.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Tuesday night. Dear Christopher, well, absolute mayhem here. But then, what else would I expect from anything that Vera tried to organise? Arrived at Great Shagthorn after a nightmare journey on the train. I use the inverted commas advisedly. Most of the trip was spent on buses, being ferried between the railway stations that were closed for renovations. If I entrained and disentrained once, I did it a dozen times. Needless to say, I was in a terrible state of anxiety by the time I reported for rehearsals 3 hours late, but that was as nothing compared to how I felt when I was greeted by the director, Benji Hartless-Dixon, and informed that I had been sacked before I had begun. It transpires that Vera did email me in the middle of last night to tell me not to come, but honestly, who checks their email at 3 a.m? Certainly not I. Anyway, it's all been a storm in a teacup, and I soon got order restored. Benji's nose had been put out of joint because he felt he hadn't been consulted about my appointment, but as soon as he saw how presentable I was, and I showed him the poem I had written for inclusion in the first show, he immediately saw what a mistake he was making and hired me on the spot. I say hired. Apparently he is expecting us to give our services for free initially. I told him you would be ringing him to discuss this. At least I should be paid for my odes, surely. I am currently staying with Vera's daughter Karen and her veterinarian husband St. John, but I don't know how long that will last. Vera comes as part of that package and we've already had words. If it becomes unendurable, I can always go and bunk up with her son Howard and his partner Anthony, who in any case are soon expecting their first baby, and might be grateful for an experienced mother to be on hand to show them which way is up. All my love, my little one. Your loving mummy, Irene. Kiss, 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 and one for luck. Kiss. Welcome, dear viewer, a poem by Irene Spencer. Imagine as you're sitting there upon your sofa or your chair that we are not some remote stars who travel the world in chauffeured cars. No, think of us as your old friends who've just popped in to make amends for any hardship in your life. Whatever troubles, whatever strife you may have suffered, we are here to comfort you and give you cheer. My name is Irene, hers is Vera, and to us you couldn't be dearer or more treasured in our hearts as you watch us take our parts. Now just pretend that your TV is a two-way mirror and we see you clear as day. Is this not fun? The grey sky's clear, out comes the sun. So just remember, no more sorrow. We're here today and every morrow.
Vera at dalesdiaries.com. Wed 3:30 a.m. Dearest Howard and Anthony, I really hate to have to make this request, but I don't know where else to turn. To put it bluntly, can Irene come and stay with you at Sheep Dipper's shed for the foreseeable future? Now, before you make the inevitable response, I can almost hear the groans. Let me just say that if you refuse, your only mother's life will become a living hell, and she may, in a moment of agony, take the only way out and end it. I don't want to over-dramatise. Goodness knows I've been accused of that often enough by Karen to have learnt my lesson. But Irene has been here for less than a day and has already managed to create chaos. Having been apprised by me in plenty of time that her services were no longer required by Dale's TV, she wilfully ignored my warning. As usual, I was trying to let her down lightly, and turned up at the studio, wearing full-length satin that looked like a nightgown, a beaded pashmina, a present from her son Christopher, so she said, a new hair rinse, lilac, and makeup her salon facial artiste had copied from a photo of Joan Collins. I ask you for a warm and informal morning chat show. To add insult to outrage, she'd come prepared with what she called an opening ode, which she insisted on reading. I thought the producer, Benji Hartley-Dixon, was going to defenestrate there and then. Fortunately, he wears baggy corduroys, and I managed to catch him by the seat as he climbed on the windowsill. But it just shows poor Benji's desperation. Of course, he had to give her the job. What else could he do? My dear little researchers Zizi, Tasmin and Polly have also been reinstated. Quite honestly, who else were they going to get to put up with such a ridiculous situation? Irene was wreathed in smiles of triumph, and to cap it all, seems to assume she can stay here for the duration. She's sleeping in Karen's turret, and I've already had to climb the wretched stairs with Horlicks, hemorrhoid cream and a hot water bottle, as Karen refuses to let her come down. I can't endure weeks of her blaming me and sulking. Karen, that is, not Irene, although come to think of it, the same could apply. Dearest darling Howie, and of course Anthony, please, please save me and the rest of your suffering family. Mumsy, kiss, 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 kiss.
Howie and Ants at sheepshag.com. Dear Irene, we wondered if you'd like to stay here while you're recording the Dale's Diaries. Don't give putting us out a thought. We could do with another pair of hands, to say nothing of the rest of the body. Speaking for ourselves, we're finding this pregnancy exhausting. Between you and us, Mumsy's explained there are a few problems over at the Bothy. So let us know when you want your stuff collecting and we'll drive over in the yoghurt delivery van. Look forward to seeing you, Howard and Anthony.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dear Howard and Anthony, thank you for your invitation to stay with you, but I'm afraid I must decline. I know you need me to help with the impending baby, but your sister Karen needs me to be here with her, as she's not getting on at all well with your mother at the moment, and I'm having to act as an emollient on troubled waters. Once I've got the situation here on an even keel, I will of course be delighted to come and stay with you to lend a hand. All fond wishes to you both. Irene, kiss. Dear Howard and Anthony, please ignore my email of an hour ago and come and collect me from your mother's as soon as possible. Naturally, Karen is very disappointed at my change of heart, but she will cope. If I stay here a moment longer, I fear for my continued working relationship with your mother, not to mention my life. She has started hurling objects at me now, and I'm nursing a very nasty bruised foot as a result. Currently, we are not speaking, and are therefore having to communicate by handwritten notes. See you soon, I hope. All love, Reen. Vera, I've gone to stay with Howard and Anthony. We'll see you at the Dale's Diaries rehearsals in the morning, by which time I hope you will be feeling somewhat calmer. Irene. P.S. Have tried to glue your ormolu clock back together again, but there appear to be a few pieces left over, which don't seem to fit anywhere.
Karen@greatshag.com. Howard, for Christ's sakes, keep the balmy old bat for as long as poss. I was about to brain her. Our dear mother had already had one go at it. As if having her around full time wasn't enough. Sorry to lumber you, but after all, you do owe me one. What goes around, etc., etc. Karen.
Vera@dalesdiaries.com. Dearest Howard, so sorry about the confusion. Irene simply refused to leave, even after your generous invitation. Not satisfied with having me running up and down every 5 minutes to the turret, the final nail was her refusing to stay in it and stalking down uninvited to my kitchen. There am I, happily trying out an inspired recipe for banana chutney, enked, to include in my organoral TV show, when Irene appears like a poltergeist over my shoulder, and with her usual carelessness of other people's feelings, remarks that she doesn't think it will televise well, as it is the colour of vomit. I was so incensed I dropped the dratted banana skin, skidded on it, crashed into the Welsh dresser, dislodged my favourite antique ormolu clock, which shot off the shelf and hit Irene on the foot before falling onto the quarry tile floor. I rue the day I had that laid, and smashing into a million pieces. I'm so upset. That clock has been in the family since my day trip to Italy last summer. It'll never be of any use as a clock again. Of course, Irene made a tremendous fuss, hopping about and yelling as though she'd been attacked by an axe murderer. St. John rushed in to see what had happened. Sabrina, Nelson and little Millie were all in tears of fright, and Karen was threatening to walk out completely. St. John immediately applied a cold compress and gave Irene, at her insistence, a tetanus injection, something to do with the clock having come from Venice. Oh, it is a relief to have a man with a syringe on tap, but I needn't tell you too that. After that, even someone as pig-headed as Irene knew her welcome was outstayed, hence the frantic emails. Try and be patient and bear it for me. When I become a household name, I will make sure you and Anthony are thoroughly remunerated. You're suffering, Mumsy. Kiss, kiss. Oh, banana chutney. 2 old bananas, half-baked apple, 2 spring onions, 1 clove garlic, handful sultanas, dollop of tarragon vinegar. Put all ingredients except sultanas in blender, whiz for 30 secs, then mix in salts. Cool in fridge for an hour before use. Delicious with pork or lamb. Kebabs.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dearest Christopher, these days my email address seems very inopposite, since I'm not in Heather Green at all, but touring round the whole of Shagthorne, both little and great. As I feared, Vera turned nasty almost before I'd unpacked my bags at her daughter's 16-room Georgian mansion house. You'd think Vera owned it rather than her delightful veterinarian son-in-law St. John, the way she bosses everybody around. She had me locked in a turret in the west wing, and even went so far as to take away the ladder which connects it to the rest of the house. In the end, I was forced to tie some sheets together to make my escape. I was dying for a tinkle, and there's no ensuite up there. But fortunately, Vera's granddaughter Sabrina was passing by below and put the ladder back in place. She's a very sweet little girl, and would be so pretty if she wore a skirt and grew her hair. I won't worry you with the full details of what transpired when I dared to go into the kitchen after visiting the bathroom. Suffice it to say that I am now staying with Vera's gay son Howard and his partner Anthony at their farm, Sheepdipper's Shed, and am nursing a gashed and bruised foot as a consequence of Vera going ballistic, as Sabrina would say. Fortunately, St. John is medically trained, albeit on animals, so I was well cared for. I'm rather anxious about rehearsals tomorrow, though. Needless to say, Vera and I aren't speaking off camera, so I am forced to communicate to her via the written word. If you're free at the weekend, shall we go on another trip? I think I will be dying to get away by then to spend some time in civilised company. Let me know, my little cherub. Your loving mummy, Irene. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Hug, hug, hug.
Dale's Diaries at dalestv.co.uk. Howard, we go out live with our first Dale's Diaries show tomorrow morning. We've had so many teething problems, literally. Irene has ordered new dentures, which have failed to arrive. She will, needless to say, go to any lengths to grab attention. There hasn't been time to think about an audience. Can you and Anthony and Natasha come and be it? That reminds me, can you bring 8 gallons of sheep's yoghurt with you? Oh, stop and find my notepad. Irene has just waltzed into the production office to display her costume. We're not speaking at the moment and are communicating by memo. Love, Mumsy. Kiss, kiss. Irene, that shade makes your face look like an old cigar. Besides, you will clash with me.
Vera, my costume choice has had producer approval. Please go through Mr. Benji Heartless-Dixon if you want to make comments of a deleterious nature.
Benji, please make it clear to Irene she can't wear a trouser suit in luminescent puce. She seems to have forgotten I am the colourful character. Don't say I didn't warn you, V.
Vera, why are you passing handwritten notes to me? I thought it was just Irene you weren't speaking to. While we're on the subject, can you please bear in mind that Dale's TV is not at home to Mrs. Crosspatch or Madame Mardy, so will both of you please try and act your age. Best, Benji.
Dear Benji, I will act my age if you will act yours. In my opinion, senior citizens are due respect from 25-year-olds. Best, Vera.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk. Dearest Christopher, thank goodness you found me again after all these years. I really don't know what I'd have done under current circumstances without a son to turn to. I won't go into the catalogue of catastrophes we have been having here today, on this, the eve of our little programme going on air to the cable television viewing public of Little and Great Shagthorne. Suffice it to say that Vera has plumbed new depths of unpleasantness, hiding my dentures, sending away the minicab driver who was couriering an emergency new set I had ordered, pouring cold water on the Yves St. Laurent trouser suit you bought me in Prague, sniggering while I was rehearsing the reading of my poem. I could go on. But what would be the point? Jealous is jealous, no matter how many words one might try to wrap it up in. Perhaps if I had proved to be less of a natural in front of the cameras, or if I weren't quite so photogenic or so popular with the crew, none of which I can help after all said and done, perhaps then she would be happier. As it is, I just try to soldier on as cheerfully as I can, replying as politely as possible to her copious handwritten notes which she thrusts at me every few minutes, despite her having been told in no uncertain terms by Benji that he will not tolerate distension in his workforce. Anyway, enough of that. It's already the early hours of the morning, and I must try to get my beauty sleep for tomorrow's show. I've already tried and tried to get to sleep, but I'm too excited, and my fertile brain is bulging with new ideas for future programmes. New odes are queuing up impatiently to slither down my writing arm and onto virgin pages, and as if that were not enough for a retired woman my age, my mind keeps circling round the subject of you, my dearest, most cherished firstborn, and how we came to be so cruelly parted and so rapturously rejoined. I have told you my part of the story, how, as a young, inexperienced girl, I was ravaged by a so-called friend of my parents and frightened by him into keeping quiet about it, how I was cruelly criticised by my mother over the ensuing months for putting on so much weight, and of how you arrived out of the blue, it seemed, while I was blacking the grates that fateful Monday morning. I recounted how you were taken from my side and hurriedly given to a member of my father's church who knew a man who knew a woman who knew a couple who couldn't have children, and of how, though I begged and pleaded on my bended knees, I could get no information as to where you'd gone and was told to forget you. What I long to know, in detail, is all about your early years. I feel that I have missed out on the joy of 1,000 small details of your life. Your first word, your first day at school, the drawings and paintings and models you would have carried home in your little ink-stained hand, whether you passed the 11+, did you join the Boy Scouts, and if so, what badges did you attain, etc., etc., ad nausea. When we go out together at the weekend, will you tell me more? And are there photographs you could bring to show me? Being reunited with you after 4 decades is such a miracle that sometimes when I'm writing to you or sitting next to you in one of your motor cars, I literally have to pinch myself to see if I am truly awake. Tomorrow is a huge day in the humble history of Irene Spencer, who fate has decreed to be plucked from obesity and hurled into the glare of televised stardom. But it is as nothing, believe me, compared to knowing that in a few short days I will be by your side again, mother and son, conjoined in an ecstatic symphony concerto of maternal bliss. Till Saturday, then, God speed these hours. As I write, I brush away soft tears of joy which trickle their trail o'er these happy cheeks. Your adoring, loving, doting Mummy Irene. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
Vera@dalesdiaries.com. Dearest Howard, can't sleep. Partly nerves, and partly the jumbo rollers with which Candy, our makeup girl, has set my hair. Every time I try to lie down, my head rebounds off the pillow. I had no idea those smiling presenters had to endure so much torture. Talking of which, this is by way of saying how grateful I am for your support at this traumatic time. I'm so glad you and Anthony and Natasha will be there tomorrow to cheer me on. Don't be late, dear, will you? The show goes out prompt at 10:30, and do wear something eye-catching. The camera will be on you, and only you, apparently. Your brother-in-law St. John is, of course, working. Little Sabrina will be at school, and your sister Karen says she is too depressed to come. How St. John puts up with her, I will never know. Of course, a lot of it is jealousy of me. She can't bear the fact that a woman of my years is still attractive and desirable, if the cameraman's winks are anything to go by, and is about to become loved by millions. Well, hundreds, anyway. It seems that Irene's perfect son, Christopher, won't be attending either. This is extremely odd, as she's been boring everyone rigid all week with stories of how he pampers and cherishes her, and constantly whipping out the one photo she has of him and poking it under people's noses. If I hadn't seen him myself once, and that in peculiar circumstances, I would be beginning to wonder whether he exists at all. I'm afraid she's riding for a fall. She gets so over-emotionally wound up and then terribly let down. I needn't remind you of the way she was dumped by that rotter Bill Snapes after all his empty promises. Even then she blamed me and said I'd deliberately come between them. She's as bad as Karen in the jealousy department. She's already attempted to drive a wedge between me and the producer, Benji Hartley Dixon, and she'd win Olympic gold if they included a competition for space invasion. As soon as that little red light goes on above the camera, she leaps in front of it, ogling and gurning. She waves her arms about so much, Benji asked her if she'd taken a course in sign language. She's been so offensive, I couldn't trust myself to speak to her, and have had to resort to more note-giving. Poor little Zizi, Tasmin and Polly have been run off their feet passing scraps of paper between us. They look close to nervous breakdown. Hardly surprising when you consider that with all the overtime unpaid, they are working for less than national minimum wage. And there was I under the misappropriation that jobs in the medium were so well remunerated. But then, of course, they are only children. Well, dear must finish and try to get some shut-eye, albeit in an upright position. I'm sure I'll be fine. I am what is known in the business, so Zizi tells me, as a trooper. I just hope Irene can take the strain. But I suppose, as per, I'll be around to pick up the pieces. Till I see your smiling faces the other side of the camera. Bless you, Mumsy.
Vera. To you this humble card I send, to jog your mind that I'm your friend. Good luck this morn, and break a leg, and try to be civilised, please, I beg. For we're on show before the nation. Let's make it a cause for celebration. With all good wishes for the making of our first Dale's Diary, your co-presenter, Irene. P.S. Don't forget to step back and to your left after your intro to my poem, and don't fling out your arm. I'm just behind you. We don't want a repeat of rehearsals.
Irene, thank you for your apology. I will take the advice to break a leg in the spirit in which I'm sure it was intended, though frankly in those ridiculous high-heeled boots you're wearing, I think it's more likely to be you. I'm glad you have reminded us that it is friendship that has brought us to this exalted position, particularly mine for you. Anyway, good luck, and do keep still. Remember what Benji said about wild gestures giving the viewers migraine. Yours, V.
Vera, you are standing between me and the camera. Please move, Irene.
Zizi, can you rush out front, dear, and tell my son Howard to put his Hackett's barber back on? That fluorescent green tank top is giving me a migraine. V. Tasmin, can you rush up to the box and have a word with Benji about the lighting? On my side of the couch there doesn't appear to be any. V.
Tasmin, can't you persuade Vera to tone down her makeup in the commercial break? That way Benji needn't keep her in the dark. Just a suggestion, Irene.
Ladies, for God's sake, stop sending me notes. Just concentrate on trying to do your job and let me do mine. Benji.
Polly, can you rush and get me an ice pack? I was bending down to check my mark for my camera position, and Irene poked me in the eye with her clipboard. V.
Vera, my sincere apologies. I swear it was an accident, so there is absolutely no need for retaliation.
Irene, so sorry my clipboard poked you up the bottom. Everyone in the audience laughed, so at least they've got a sense of humour. Vera.
Girls, girls, girls. That is absolutely enough. Stop hitting each other and start talking to each other. You'll make us a laughingstock, and may I remind you, the press are in. Benji.
The Shagthorne Gazette. Yesterday's TV, reviews by Nigel Norris. 2 new stars were added to the cable firmament yesterday in a new magazine programme called The Dale's Diaries, Dale's TV, 10:30 a.m. Those local viewers who were wise and lucky enough to buy their sheep's yoghurt direct from my good friends Howard Small and Anthony Flowers at Sheep Dipper's Shed, Shooters Hill, Shale, Shap, near Great Shagthorn. Fabulous wholesale, prices negotiable, personal callers welcome. Might have recognised the distinctive profile of Howard's mother, Vera Small, joined here by her old chum Irene Spencer. From my privileged position in the studio audience, the two ladies were an absolute delight, with a mixture of old wives' tales, joke recipes, hilarious poetry and comic slapstick. Certainly this reviewer hasn't seen anything to match their side-splitting running gag with a clipboard since the good old days of Abbott and Costello. Star, 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 star. 5-star rating. A must-see.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk, 4:45am in the morning. Dear Christopher, the other night I emailed you, unable to sleep, my mind full of apprehensives about the making of the first Dale's Diaries cable television show. Tonight, or rather this morning, I am emailing you again, unable to sleep, but this time flushed with the triumph of success. Yesterday morning we made the show, and it went out live to the whole of Shagthorn and its neighbouring environs. So, to use the vernacular of the business, we are well and truly aired. Naturally, Vera was troubled from the word go, right through to the word it's a wrap, TV parlance for home time. But as per usual, I strove to ignore her rudeness and aggression, and apart from a badly bruised bottom, survived intact. Everybody was so giddily intoxicated at having accomplished our maiden opening that the wrap party lasted until 4 this morning. Unfortunately, Vera just can't hold her drink, unlike your good old mum. So, as per always, she made a complete exhibition of herself, dancing on tables, singing ribald songs from the last war, and even, I'm appalled to say, flashing various garments of her underwear. A journalist friend of Vera's son, Howard, Nigel Norris of the Shagthorn Gazette, was there for the recording. Fortunately, had to leave the party early to get his copy in before Vera got into her stride. And though I have not seen his review yet, he left me in no doubt that we would be written up as a rave. I am so looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, dear, and though I know you love your motor cars and have been anticipating another long drive out somewhere, culminating with another exquisite luncheon at a wayside inn, I am rather hoping you will agree to staying with me here at Sheep Dipper's Shed instead. Howard and his partner, Anthony, are taking some of their sheep to a show. Not as audience members. I made that mistake. Easily done if you see the way they spoil their livestock. Heaven knows how they'll behave with their surrogate baby when it is born. No, they're entering the sheep in the best groomed category at the Royal Micklechester Agriculture Extravaganza. So they've asked me, albeit at short notice, to hold the fort at the farm for the day. Anticipating your customary easygoing attitude, I've been into Great Shagthorn this afternoon and bought some provisions to thoroughly spoil you with some of Mum's home cooking. I hope you won't think that I'm blowing my own trumpet if I add that I was approached by several members of the public wreathed in smiles who wanted to congratulate me on my performance. So perhaps it will be just as well if we do stay indoors. We wouldn't want our lunch to be constantly interrupted by fans seeking my autograph. Although in the long term, I suppose it is just something that I shall have to get used to. Since I had to walk into the village and back, I couldn't carry any wine. Could you be a dear and bring some with you? You might as well bring a case while you're about it. It'll save my poor old legs. Oh, and a bottle of gin and some tonic. Maybe some Amontillado too. And perhaps some brandy if you'd like some, unless you'd prefer port. Or Sambuca. Anyway, I'll leave it up to you. Can't wait till you get here. Masses of hugs and kisses. Mummy Irene. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
VeraDalesDiaries.com, 5am. Dear Howie and Shantasha, too excited to sleep, so catching up on mail. Thank you so much for today. Can't express how much I needed your support, especially getting home from party. Must do something about that slippery step. You were all wonderful at tasting my recipe for toad in the hole with sheep dipper sauce. Hope Tasha is better now. Delicious though the toad was, I did think she was a bit rash having a second helping, and I know I said be eye-catching, Howie, but stripping off and jumping into vat of yoghurt sauce to show his rejuvenating qualities was beyond call of duty. Dale's TV have already had several emails requesting your address. Some have attached photos. Now, I may have misheard. There was a lot of shouting at the party, but I think you mentioned you and Ants were off to the Mickleshire show this morning. If you are thinking of leaving Irene in charge, I can only say don't, especially if there's any of your sheep dipper Chardonnay about. Did you see the state she was in by the end of the party? Must stop now. Seem to be seeing double. Must be something wrong with the screen. Big kisses, Mumsy.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.co.uk, 5:30 a.m. in the morning. Vera. Having just sent an email to my son Christopher, I received at the same time an email from you, evidently meant for Howard, but erroneously sent to me. I think pot calling the kettle best describes your slanderous accusations regarding my alleged inebriation. Since you are quite evidently not feeling yourself at this precise moment, I shall turn a blind eye to your allegations that I am incapable of keeping an eye on the farm for a few hours in Howard and Anthony's stead, and suggest you go to bed and get some sleep, as I myself am about to do. Irene. P.S. I don't know whether you were compost mentis enough at the party to take in my words of congratulation on the show, but the clipboard incident notwithstanding, I thought you managed to take your part quite well. P.P.S. If you're still feeling poorly on waking, I recommend Parsons Extra Strength Liver Salts as a cure. I have never needed to use it myself personally, but I believe from others who have that it is extremely efficacious.
Saturday, 11 a.m. Dear Irene, have just come round. Thought the terrible banging was in my head, but it was just dear little Sabrina at the front door wanting breakfast. Karen's still in bed, of course. And after a pot of strong coffee, read your email. Judging by my state this morning, I must have been rather inebriated myself last night, so I hope you will take my comments with a pinch of salt. Parsons Extra Strength Liver Salt, in fact. I'm sure you're as much in need of it as I am. I'll refrain from pointing out that I do have a paragraph at the foot of my emails saying they are confidential and intended solely for the use of the individual or entity to which they are addressed. I can't, however, fault you on the instruction. If you have received this email in error, please notify. Never mind, my dear. Let us put all annoyances behind us and enjoy our mutual triumph. Have you read Nigel Norris's piece in the Shagthorne Gazette? I would be jumping for joy if I wasn't feeling so poorly. I know he's a friend of Howard's, but that counts for nothing these days. I'm sure he wouldn't have been so eulogious if he didn't mean it. As for the clipboard incident, it was obviously such a success, I think we should make it a feature. Perhaps we could vary the slapstick by tripping each other up with our microphone cables. To dispel any fear of hard feelings, I shall pop over to Sheep Dippers at lunchtime to make sure you're all right and to bring you some of my hangover cure, chicken soup with coriander and sheep's yoghurt. I can't avoid driving through Great Shagthorne, so I shall probably be forced to stop here and there and greet my public. All till later, your fellow celebrity, Vera.
Saturday, 12:45 midday. Vera. Tried to call you, but you must be on your way, so excuse this note, left here in haste for you on the kitchen table on the back of this muesli packet. I was just checking my email and saw yours saying you're coming over for lunch when Christopher arrived in his Ferraro. When I agreed to Howard and Anthony's tardy request to stay here to look after the farm today, I thought that would be all right with Chris, but what I didn't know was that in fact he has a business meeting in Amsterdam this evening, so we've had to hare off to make this afternoon's ferry. Thus, I hope you won't mind milking the sheep in my stead. Instructions attached by string to teats in shed. Natasha is upstairs asleep as she didn't feel up to going to the show with the boys. She's got a little tummy upset, apparently, so she might be able to help you with the muck spreading if she feels a little better later. Perhaps you'll be able to tempt her with the rejuvenating qualities of your coriander soup. Thanks for helping out. Back tomorrow evening. Have fun, Irene.
Howie and Ants at sheepshag.com. St. John. In haste, I'm availing myself of Howard's email. Rang your surgery, but just got engaged. You must have a lot of pet emergencies. Can you get over to Sheep Dippers as soon as you've finished with them? I'm afraid we have one here. Natasha is rolling around in agony, and I don't think Toad in the Hole would produce such a violent reaction. V. Irene. Got here to find the house deserted and screams coming from upstairs bedroom. Naturally assumed the worst, armed myself with the heritage ornamental shepherd's staff Howard has mounted on the wall, and rushed upstairs to find poor Natasha abandoned and in a terrible state. She told me you had just left on a jaunt with your son Christopher in his new focaccia. How could you be so selfish? The poor little thing was obviously in labour. I couldn't raise the doctor Saturday morning, what did I expect? And casualty at Micklechester told me an ambulance would be at least 2 hours. I rue the day we lost Great Shagthorne Cottage Hospital. By this time, Natasha was climbing the walls, and I had no choice but to roll up my sleeves and put on the kettle. Fortunately, my veterinarian son-in-law, St. John, came to the rescue. He got Natasha onto the kitchen table. Howard won't be pleased about the stains on his strip pine. And less than 10 minutes later had delivered a perfect baby girl. Natasha made a quick recovery, she's young, of course, and in no time we were all sitting in the kitchen, Natasha still on the table, having a laugh and a large glass of Sheep Dippers Chardonnay. What a pity you missed it. I do hope the trip you had with Christopher was worth it. Vera. Darling Howie, welcome home. In your absence, you became the happy father of a lovely little girl. I'm proud to say I was the first to hold her in my arms. In fact, I caught her as she popped out and shot across the table. Congratulations, my dear son. And of course, Anthony. Your loving Mumsy. P.S. Notice the list you left for the errand, Irene. Sorry we didn't have time to spread the muck. P.P.S. Just heard the sheep bleating. Off to milk them immediately.
Dear Vera, here I am, sitting in an hotel bedroom back here in Prague again. Chris has bought me a mobile phone with email facilities. It's called a Whopper, I believe, which is strange, since it is very, very small, and a most marvellous flexible keyboardy thing, which folds up into the size of a cigarette packet, so he can get in touch with me wherever I am, and I can contact anybody, anywhere, anytime. Isn't technology marvellous once you get used to it? You may be wondering, why Prague? I thought she said Amsterdam, which in fact I did. But Chris loves driving so much that once his business meeting was over, he jumped behind the wheel of the Ferraro, and before we knew it, we were in Czechoslovakia. I only hope we make it back in time for rehearsals on Monday, but if not, perhaps you could improvise without me for a couple of hours. Anyway, this is just to say that I got your email about Natasha's birth and to apologise most profanely. If I had had the remotest inkling the poor girl was in contractions, I would not have dreamt of deserting my post. Please give my good wishes to all concerned. Congratulatory poem to follow. Sincerely and with love, Irene.